There's a belief I've carried for years, one that quietly shapes nearly every conversation I have on this show. Your past does not define you, it prepares you. And every now and then, a story walks into your life that reflects that belief in the most unexpected way. David Dowd is one of those stories. David has spent years working in customer service. He's worked as a mortgage loan officer, and now he works in the financial space. But like so many of us, professional titles rarely tell the full story. David, welcome to the show. And before we dive into your professional journey, which I'm very anxious for, I have to ask about something that you just casually mentioned. You were the singer in a metal band. This is not something I hear every day.
Yeah.
So how on earth did that chapter of your life ever happen?
Yeah, no, it was one of probably the more unique parts of my life, but I met my band in college and we all kind of just, hey, I like metal music. And I'm like, well, I don't really know a whole lot about, metal, especially like this wasn't like 80s, like you're probably used to thinking like Judas Priest or something. No, this was like heavier than that. This is like metalcore as it is called. So I didn't even know much about that, but I was like, hey, I'll play second guitar. Let's give it a shot. It's out in Castroville is where it was at. So if my bandmates are listening in, hey, shout out. But basically went out to Castroville, started playing second guitar, and the singer wasn't really meshing with the band. And I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I could do a better job singing than playing guitar. Just never really got any official training on any of this, but I played the clarinet in throughout middle school and high school. So you have to play a lot of the melodies. You're kind of used to that. And the way I build music is like, I got to hear the song and then I can just put lyrics on top of it. That's kind of my work way of doing things. So it was a wonderful experience for 3 years. We played a lot at what used to be the White Rabbit. Now it's the Paper Tiger. We went out to Austin only once. That really sucked because that's like a music town. And we went out to Corpus Christi a few times. So well over 100 shows. Great time, great guys to work with. But just, you get older, you have kids, there's a lot of other responsibilities. It's harder to stay in that scene. And that's just kind of how it played out for us. So,
Well, what was the name of the band? Can you say?
Yes, I absolutely can. It was Culebra, which is supposed to be Hebrew. It's like Kalefra, I think is how you're supposed to say it. But it's Hebrew for bad dog. But we misspelled it. So like that's why nobody took the band name. We were like making the website and everything. So fun fact, we spaced Kale, but it's supposed to be another A there and then VRA. So either way, it was a great time. I enjoyed that chapter a lot and lots of great memories.
Well, everything we do is preparing us for what we're doing now. So I would be, once we finish our visit today, I'm going to be curious as to how it led you to where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because music, I love music and I can play some instruments and I sing, but music is it's a powerful form of expression, and I interviewed a lady a couple of weeks ago that believes firmly that everyone can learn creativity. It's not, a lot of people think you're just born with creativity,
Right.
But her belief, and she educates a lot of corporations on how you can find your creative flow and how you can learn it as a skill. So music, I think there are some people that are very good at it. And then there's some people that really want to be, and they're learning.
Yes, I learned while being a vocalist that technically anybody could become a better vocalist with training and practice. And it's possible for everyone, but it's just a matter of like, can you dedicate that time?
Yeah.
And is it something you're passionate about? Because obviously it requires a lot of hard work to get to a point where people are like, you know what? I'm okay with listening to them sing as opposed to like, karaoke night.
Well, I'm going to use this as a way to pull in the past, performing. So to me, performing and customer service seem like completely different worlds. But if you've ever worked in customer service, I think you would understand what I mean when I say that you're performing. Because no matter how you feel, you still have to be pleasant and kind and good, as to have good customer service. So, do you see any unexpected connections between performing and working with people?
Yes. Yes. Because to your point, you may not be feeling top of your game. You may not be feeling like the best person in the world. Something happened and you're deep in thought about something, or you need to work out something later. But in that moment, if you're truly going to serve somebody, you've got to put that aside. Hey, put this aside for a moment and put on my best performance in a sense, but also like genuinely going, hey, if I'm actually going to help this person, I need to be kind. I need to be courteous. I need to have patience. I think that's a big one. Patience.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's just like, oh God, I'm feeling so. Maybe they're not talking to you nicely. That's another thing too, because you've also got to kind of see where the challenges are in the communication, because different communicators, right? Maybe
Right.
you're someone who wants to talk about your day, talk about your life. And this person's just like, let's get to the point, right to it. I don't want to deal with any of this stuff. I just want to get on with my life. And so you kind of deal with those. I think there's like 4 or 5 different types of people based on who you're reading.
Mhm.
But yeah, you got to deal with all those different types of people. So it's a performance. It's also adaptive. I feel that's another one too, because it's like you got to adapt to the person, and then you've got to try your best, because you're really going to serve somebody. You got to talk their language. You got to kind of copy them some degree. And like, hey, if they're to the point, okay, you're going to kind of shift to being to the point. If they're, oh, I just want to know about your day, man. How you doing? You're going to be like, oh, well, I'll tell you what, this is what's going on with me right now. Oh boy, howdy. I'll tell you what, but get that going on. So there's kind of different ways of going about it. But I would say, yeah, it's absolutely a performance. But I think as long as it's coming from the lens of you're trying to help that person, it won't
Mhm.
seem inauthentic.
Right, and, there's so many different types of people out there. You have to learn to read the room, which I feel believe it or not, I feel fortunate that I grew up the way I did, because when you grow up in an abusive situation, you learn to read the room real quick.
Mm,
And,
yes.
oddly enough, we find the most terrible person in the room, and we make a beeline for that person so that we can manipulate or control or help others, prevent them from getting hurt too. So it's a protective thing. So I learned to read the room early in my life, and so I guess that's why I went into customer service too, because I learned how to read people really well. But what originally pulled you into customer service work? I mean, what made you wanna get into it?
Man, I'll tell you what, that just looking back at my past and like, David, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind? And honestly, it was just like, well, I need money. I need to be able to eat. I need to be able to pay for things. So very early on, that's all work ever really was for me. It was like,
Mhm,
hey, I'm doing this to make money to then go and buy things. There wasn't really a savings or investing aspect to it. It wasn't so much that I'm trying to build something, trying to go to a higher place like management or a bigger position later on. It was just, hey, I'm going to work and I'm going to get money, and then I'm going to use that to go and buy the things I need. And it's like very transactional. I guess that's the way you could put it. Super transactional. But as time moves along, because again, and I get this from what was it? It's Cal Newport's book, the So Good They Can't Ignore You, I believe is the name.
oh, I've not read that. I'll have to look it up.
It's a great read. Well, basically, Cal Newport's a computer. He's a computer programmer, and you can definitely tell he's a computer programmer. The way he writes is very like if then else kind of, it's very, very straightforward. And in the book, he talks about how you don't look for your passion. You're not looking for that when you're trying to find what you need to do for an occupation, but rather you do an occupation and you get so good at it that eventually that becomes your passion. That's like the kind of the overall overarching theme
Mhm.
of the book, which I really enjoyed. And I think that's kind of what happened to me. So I started off I was waiting tables. That's like as far as the service aspect thing. I was waiting tables at a retirement home.
Hey, man,
So,
there's nothing wrong with that. It's still to
oh
this
no,
day the best money I ever made.
but yeah, no. I mean, when I was working at Joe's Crab Shack, absolutely, because there was tips in the mix, right? But at the retirement home, you're just making an hourly wage, and I love the folks. I think the hardest part about working that job was when someone would pass away. That was really tough,
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
tough. But no, they were great people. Even if they were cranky at first or grumpy, man, they start to grow on you. They start to learn their story. What did they do in World War II? Who do they love? They come by to visit sometimes. It was just an experience, to say the least. But yeah, service, and then from there into the insurance. So technically, that's kind of where my finance background really started, was with insurance. It was customer service, bear in mind, but you
Yeah.
start to learn, like, what is insurance? Why is it important? A lot of us think it's just a waste of money because we'll never, if we never end up using it. But that's the whole point, you
Yeah.
don't use it, and that's a good thing, right?
Right. And I always say to people, if you don't understand something, even if you don't have a desire to do it, get curious. And
Yes.
and it really helps you relate to the people that are in that line of work, because it can help you relate to them better if you understand what they do on a regular basis. Like, I always
Yeah.
visualize myself sitting in their chair on the other side of the table. Like,
Yes.
how do they do this job? Why do they do this job? What kind of person are they? I
Yeah.
don't know. I just do that a lot. But do you think do you think most people misunderstand customer service? Like, they don't relate to it if they've never worked in it?
Yes. I think it should be a law that everyone goes through customer service as an occupation at some point in their life. I just because there's so much empathy that you build being in the seat of trying to help somebody,
Mhm.
and then looking on the counter end when you're actually the customer and you're being serviced, then you start to notice more things than if you hadn't. So, I'll basically call it my mom out on this one. Every time we go out to eat, if the service is getting kind of shoddy, right? It's getting
Mhm.
kind of, oh, they forgot something. Oh, they're taking a while. My mom's one of those people who start to get a little upset. And I have to kind of like, it's okay, mom, because, I've come from that world. So I understand, hey, there's a lot more other people working here. Could be the
Yeah.
kitchen staff is behind. Could be, hey, they're really busy right now. And so just kind of understanding that better. My mom, she did that a long time ago. And I guess it's just been so long that maybe it's not
Well, you
ingrained
have to
in her.
talk her off the ledge. I mean,
I
because
do.
that's my husband never worked in customer service either. So he's really hard on people, and it's embarrassing to me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I talk him off the ledge. I say, like, "Okay, let's think about
Get
before you
psychoanalytical
act.
on him.
Let's look at that, a little closer." And I always start, like, with waiting, like, I always start at $10 for the tip or whatever the number is, and then as they do poor service, we reduce it $1 every time they do something not good.
Yeah. That's actually kind of fun when you think about it. It's like, well,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
It keeps him off the ledge, so to speak.
oh,
Keeps him focused on something else. "Ha, I'm taking another dollar off. I had no tea."
yeah, that's the power, getting the power back. It's like, oh, give me
Yes.
one less dollar. Yes.
Well, can I ask, do you have any story for the listeners, where you've experienced kindness in customer service? Like, where does it show up in your work? I mean, we haven't
Oh,
gotten to your current work yet, but
oh yeah.
have you ever experienced some exceptionally kind, um, memory or something that happened in your life?
Certainly. I would say when the customer is crying, and like for good reason, obviously, not, you know, bad reason, but they're just happy, you know, that you were able to do what they needed. And maybe they were experiencing a really rough time. It's like it's usually there was a couple of instances where this happened, where the lady or the gentleman, they were just, there's a car accident, because this is car insurance was a part of this. So there's a car accident, they're freaking out. They survived, because obviously when they call and say, "I got to report an accident," first thing is, everyone okay? Let them tell you what's going on,
Yeah.
and then you would get them over to claims after telling them, if they had questions, obviously, and you'd be surprised how often there's an emotional impact if you're just that calm in the storm, if you will, right? It's that
Yeah.
calmness. So that's one thing. I'm trying to think of another great example of kindness. Waiving fees. That was another one too. You make
Oh.
someone's day, right?
Yes, yes, it can, and I've been in that boat before, where something is insufficient, but all of a sudden everything coming, you don't know it. And then before you know it, you have like 10 NSF fees and you're strapped for money as it is. So you just think, oh, they're never going to refund anything. And there have been many times where they're like, you know what, Pam, we want to help you out. You've been a great customer up to this point. So we'll just refund them all. I mean, it was like you think that they had just given me the Taj Mahal, but there is
Yeah.
kindness out there. And sometimes there are people where I find it's hard to maintain. Do you ever feel like their kindness is difficult to maintain?
For me, I guess it really depends on what the situation is. Like,
Mm,
I feel like I'm genuinely trying to be kind all the time if I can help it, but it does require a bit of energy depending on what's going on in your life. Just like we are talking about at the beginning of the episode, it's just like if there's a lot of things weighing you down, it's like, I don't know, there's bills, there's, I don't know, so you got to go to the doctor for something, you're not so sure what's going to happen, you name it.
mhm,
Um, it can weigh heavy on you. So I think it's always best to start with kindness, right? You always start with kindness, even if it's tough. Even give them a smile. I don't know if it's in personal interaction as opposed to over the phone, or show the smile in when you talk, because people can always tell when you're smiling and you're talking, right? It's like, oh yes, yes, you can tell. So always start with that, and then try your best to just remember that they don't know what you know, right?
mhm,
They're not aware that these are the way that we deal with waiving fees. This is not the way that we're supposed to do this type of coverage, or whatever it is you're trying to help them with, right? Try to
mhm.
help it, make it easy to understand. And that's another way you can be kind, right? Is that, oh, now they know what they're up against. Now they know what's going on. There's more calming from that too. Because when I think we don't know something, that uncertainty, that ambiguity, it can really bring in a lot of like, I guess anxiety, right? The
Mhm.
cortisol is rising. Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on, and now they're charging me for this, and oh my gosh, I don't. That starts to happen for a lot of people, and so that's another part of what it means for kindness. It doesn't just have to be like you were smiling and you were happy. It could also mean like what you're doing, the actions, and then the experience for the customer. I think that's really strong too.
Love that so much. It really resonates with me because that's something I talk about often on the show. And the anxiety you mentioned, a lot of times when we are performing, we're not behaving in the manner that we normally would, that compounds over time. Right? And you just keep holding it in, keep doing what you're supposed to do, checking all the boxes at work, at home, however, whatever you need to do, you keep doing it because it has to be done, but you may not be feeling it inside of you. And so we have named it. We call it the quiet depletion. And
Ah,
quiet depletion, a lot of people suffer from that. And then it starts showing itself over time with unhealthy habits. It could be over drinking, overworking, over pleasing, overeating, all the things, that we reference as a binge. And it's not just food. But what happens is you're trying to be kind, but you're not feeling it inside. You feel numb, you don't really feel anything. You're just going through the motions. But people know this because like you said, smiling on the phone, well, they can't see your eyes, but if you're in person and you're smiling and your eyes aren't, then you know instantly that they're not really feeling it. And so being genuine, this is where I'm leading with this. Being genuine is very important, but how do you make sure that you're really feeling kind inside your heart and your soul? Well, you know it. I mean, you have to remind yourself, you have to take a moment to remind yourself that you not only need to be kind to others, you need to be kind to yourself. And it is a superpower, David. It really is. If you give kindness, it feels good. It makes you feel good about yourself. But if, receiving it feels great too. But when you give kindness freely and genuinely, then it helps you feel better about the person you are. That's why it feels good to do it. We want to keep doing it, but quiet depletion can be a big problem physically, eventually, if you don't address it.
Yeah, and I think back to some of the works I've read that talk about kind of bits and pieces of that, where it's like, let's say you're feeling that depletion. It's like, oh no, I'm I'm smiling here, but I'm not smiling here.
Mhm.
I'm like halfway, you know. Oh, it's so fake. You know, people sniff that out. Oof, you know. I think back to I read a David Goggins book, and he talks about the cookie jar, right?
Yes.
So every
Yes.
time you're feeling down and you can't go on any further, you reach into this cookie jar, this metaphoric cookie jar. These are things that have happened in your life that you are grateful for, or things that have happened in your life that you have proven yourself to yourself, right? So you said every day I'm going to work out for, 5 times a week for a full year, and you managed to pull that off one year. Oh man, look at you reaching into the cookie jar. Remember that? You're feeling depleted, but you bring that up and you're like, okay, hey, I've managed to do that before. Okay, this isn't as crazy as it sounds, because we're our own biggest critic at the end of the day, right? I think it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we know everything that's going on. We know all of our weaknesses. We know all of our strengths. Well, if we're
Well, we
thinking about our
focus on the
strengths,
weaknesses. I don't know why, but we do.
yeah, I'll tell you why. And this is based on like the science of things, right? So it's kind
Mhm.
of like, why do we have a negative bias? Why is it always the default is negative? It's like, always think worst case before you think of best case, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, because the humans that survived long ago, those were the ones that survived, because the optimists were like, oh, look at that bush shaking over there. That's probably nothing. And they walk over there and they get eaten by a lion. So now that they don't have any babies to spread beyond if they hadn't already had babies. And then the ones who are like, "Ooh, I don't trust that. Ooh, that could be something." Those are the ones that survived, have babies, and so on and so forth. So that's one idea, anyway, as to why we always go to the negative, and why the negative is always such the greater thing that we think about, as opposed to the positive. And I think that's one of the challenges of kindness too, is because we are built that way, from many many years of generations. And so I think if you just focus in on, okay, am I helping this person or am I not?
Mhm.
I think that's one way. Like if you're just looking at it from a transactional point of view, am I helping or am I not? And then if you want to take it even deeper, you could say, why am I doing this? Do I enjoy this? Or am I just doing this for a paycheck? Because I had to come to that fork in the road myself. Because I'm like, man, taking these calls all day, and sometimes they don't appreciate you. I mean,
Right.
you can probably say that from personal experience, right?
Well, I have to say, I don't normally I mean, I do get approached a lot. The more, seen you are for your works, the more people want to try and sell their services because, they gotta put food on the table too. And so, I don't ignore them. I always respond with respect and just tell them I have, like, 0 money in my account. And then they appreciate that, and they're like, "Well, let me know when you are ready." But I loved your approach, David, and that's why I replied and responded because you were so genuine. You even had, noticed my work and appreciated it and let me know that. And so that matters. I thought it was very kind of you to know what I do, you know. And so that's why I responded. I replied to your inquiry, you know. Um so this you moved into mortgage lending, I think, correct?
Yes,
Which
that's correct.
carries an entirely different kind of pressure, I'm sure. What was the most challenging about that chapter of your life?
Whew, boy, where to begin? I think that's the best way. If I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, oh, it wasn't my fault, which I never really like looking at it from that point, if I'm being honest. I like to
Mhm.
try and be as accountable as possible. I know you couldn't control everything, yes. But as far as like being able to feel like you have more control over situations that you can't, the factors you can't control. So for me, it was like, yeah, the markets were rough. I
Yeah.
think we've been at 6, 7% for well over almost 4 years now, which by comparison of like longer data, that's obviously not that bad when you're looking at like the 80s and stuff. But right now is when it matters, right? So that was one challenge that technically I didn't have any control over. And I would say the other one is that there's just a lot of gatekeeping in the mortgage lending space, because when people go to look for a house, the first thing they think of is not a mortgage loan officer. Heck, most people don't even know that job exists,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They think, look, I'm looking for a house. I want to go talk to someone who can show me those houses. And that's a real estate agent or a realtor, right? There is a difference technically, not by much. And essentially, as a loan officer, the challenge is if you can't get customers outright, which tends to be the case because most people don't even know that you exist, the next challenge is like, okay, well, then that means I need to be a partner with a real estate agent who would be willing to pass on business to me. They're showing the houses, but they're not dealing with the finances, right? That's supposed to be my job. So building that trust, it was difficult too, because even they're starving because they're not getting as much production as they're used to getting.
Well, and
And so,
repeat business too,
yeah,
selling and buying, selling and buying. I'm not a realtor, but I have lots of them in my family. And
yes,
yes, they're one of their most important relationships is with the mortgage lender. Um,
yes.
because here in Texas, I don't know where else, but I mean, when we were house shopping, we had to be qualified first to see how much of a house we could get.
Yep.
But, that mortgage lender, they know you inside and out, man. They know everything so that you're not going to get excited about a house that you absolutely cannot afford. And it wouldn't help you, really.
No,
Who
it
wants a
really,
house,
no.
that they can't pay for,
Yeah, exactly. So
you know?
for the listeners out there, I recommend going through a loan officer first. Yes, to your point, you're going to shoot down some dreams, but at least now we're in reality, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to think about these banks. You got to look at it from the lens of the banks. They're going to look at your finances, and like you said, you're basically naked financially in front of people. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are uncomfortable with that. That's why a lot of people don't like talking about finances. Same as a doctor, right? So you're there and they're going to tell you this is how much house you can afford based on all the factors. And then you go house shopping. If we're really doing it, in my opinion, the best way,
Mhm.
that's the way you would do it. But again, most people don't think that way. They think, look, I just want to check out some houses and I want to see potentials, and that's going to make me happy. It's kind of give me an idea of what's out there. And so they usually just start the house hunt before they even talk about the finances.
Well, this is so important because even my son, who works in investing, and he's very familiar with the market. But I was wondering, do you find that when people aren't upfront with you or, you know, honest about their situation, and then you just can't hide it,
Yeah,
So
I
once
pull
you
that credit.
realize what it is, I mean, day after day, do you find that more people are, uh, they're not telling you the truth. They're not lying or trying to hide it because they know you're going to see it anyway. But I guess, misleading is the word that I'm looking for. Day after day of getting people like that, or do you find that most people are just pretty much appreciate knowing what their situation is up front?
Okay.
How do you
Looking at it
not
from the
get
lens.
disappointed? How do you not get
Yeah.
disappointed in people?
Okay. It's a great question. Um, I would say you have to remind yourself that you're the professional. Okay. So that means you're going to know more about this subject than most people coming your way. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And so you got to look at it through the lens of empathy. I think that definitely helps when it comes to like, oh, they weren't being straightforward about that. They said they had no debt and yet they just got themselves a car. We got to do everything over again because here we are in the middle of trying to get this closed, and then they did that move and they just didn't know, or they bought furniture, right? They bought furniture because they thought we weren't at the closing table yet, folks. So that means if you go and you put furniture on finance up, that starts the whole process over again. So you got to be very careful. And I think setting good expectations, great expectations, if you can help it, that really is another game changer too, because as long as they understand, okay, during this spot these are the things we can do and this is what we're trying to accomplish, and make sure everyone's on board. And if they are, it tends to be a better experience for them and definitely a better experience for you as a professional, because then okay, great, they're not going to go out there and buy all that furniture while we're trying to get this across the closing table. And once it's closed, okay, yeah, go crazy, go get whatever furniture you want. I don't care at that point, because now the transaction is closed. You have your house and it's not going to affect anything, or start things over to push it out another 2 weeks or whatever the situation is. So I think having empathy is the key thing to answer your question. Though. Empathy,
Yeah.
knowing, hey, I'm the professional. I studied for this. I trained for this. I have seen a lot of situations like this, and they haven't, and that's okay.
And we've had great mortgage lenders in the past because, our situation was, we thought, bleak. We didn't even think that we could qualify for anything at one time. And they let us keep our dignity, even after seeing everything and exposed to the banks. The mortgage lender was able to sustain our dignity, which was very important for us to
Yes.
move forward. And if we couldn't qualify for something, or people that I know that can't qualify, it would be so great if the mortgage lender would, suggest or recommend, an expert in finances so that they could help them learn and unlearn a lot of bad habits, and then
Yes.
feel good maybe in the near future about their finances. It's just that they don't know. They don't know, and they don't understand why it's not working. It's like weight. You wanna lose the weight, but you just keep going up and down, and you don't know why. And it
Yeah.
just takes someone explaining to you, "This is why.
Yeah. Right.
You cannot do this." And so, you shared that there was a defining reason you left customer service and became your own boss. Can you tell me about that turning point?
Well, not having a choice in the matter is definitely one big thing. Because unfortunately, there was a technical scenario, and I don't want to go into the nitty gritty details, but
Mhm.
basically, there was a timing schedule situation that went on for far too long, and they weren't happy about that. And so instead of after having fixed it and just continuing forward as if nothing happened, they really dragged their feet on that one. I think it took a long time for them to just tell me, "Hey, sorry, you got to go."
Yeah.
So that was kind of rough, but at the same time, to be surprisingly, I did feel a little relieved that I didn't have to take phone calls anymore.
Mhm.
Not to say that, I didn't enjoy the conversations or I didn't enjoy the job overall, but just to go, you know what? I don't have to do like 10 more hours because I did a 4 by 10 shift. So it was like 10 hours a day of just, call after call after call after call after call. Did a
Gosh.
little processing on the back end too. So like part of the day was calls, part of the day was processing, like stuff they would email and fax in. But yeah, that's basically what happened in a nutshell. Is like, they let me go. And at that point I was like, I spent almost 13 years at this and they let me go that easy. I feel like there's got to be something wrong about how much leverage the other entity has over me of my own well-being and my own life. It was really a moment of reflection, right? It's like, hey,
Mhm.
you, that was really risky. Just all of your eggs in the one basket as far as income.
Yeah.
And I think it's better. It's harder. Don't get me wrong. It's harder. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's much harder going in your own direction, being your own boss, but it's not only more rewarding, but I feel like it's also where you can really make the most of your time because we're only given 24 hours a day. Everyone, it's the great equalizer, right? No, the richest person in the world and the poorest person, they got 24 hours, right, to do
Mhm.
something in a day, whatever that is.
It's time that
So
passes anyway.
exactly, it marches on, as they say, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, hey, what can I do that can compound the income if I put in the harder work for that direction, that entrepreneurial direction? And that's where I said, hey, loan officer sounds great because I mean, everybody wants a house, right? That was kind of the initial, thought
Yeah.
process. Everybody wants a house at some point. Well, most people. And I was thinking, well, I don't have to sell that because, coming from customer service to sales, that's a pretty big, difference in what you do. Um, so that was one of the things where it's like, yeah, okay, let's help people finance their homes. This would be great. And that's what started that journey. Unbeknownst to me, of course, all of the gatekeeping and the challenges that followed thereafter. Definitely should have put in far more effort. But when it's just you against you and you've got nothing to, kind of copy after, emulate, and you've got no one kind of helping you along the way, like other people that are right there in the trenches with you and they're growing their business while you're growing. Like you don't have that synergy. It's just like, it's very difficult to not only stay focused, but also to do the things that move the needle, right? I think that's very challenging.
Well, and it is. And someone once told me, if you're ever second guessing, having your own business or having your own thing, working for
Mm,
yourself,
yes.
just think about when you work for someone else, you're working for their dreams, not your own. And there are people that are completely content to be the Indian, so to speak, work for someone else. They don't want to deal with all of that because that's the first lesson I learned with my first company is that, you can no longer do your craft. The graphic design, I had to hire other graphic designers and just manage people,
Ah,
and didn't get to do my creative thing. And I missed it, because it's just a whole other world to manage people.
yes.
But if you've been in customer service, you have the journey that you and I have, then we can be empathetic and compassionate for people that work for us, and be able to read them when they're having a good day or a bad day,
Yes.
and understanding where they're at, instead of judging them. And you've even been in mortgage lending where it's probably easy to judge people based on their history, but you don't know the
Yes.
whole story behind that. It's just
Right.
like the man sitting with the sign at the traffic light.
Right.
We judge him, as being a loser or a drug addict or whatever, but we don't know his story. We really don't. He deserves a smile from someone. And because he feels failed, right? And so maybe you felt failed when they let you go from your job, but because you had applied yourself so much to the job, you poured a lot into it. But you were not a failure. You were just gonna and some people think they have to start over, but you don't. You just pick up where you left off, you know?
Fu Funny story, actually. When they let me go, my wife was freaking out. She's like, "Oh my god," you
What are
know,
we gonna do?
what are we gonna do now?" But me, I was all smiles. I was like, "They let me go. They let me go. Oh my god, 13 almost 13 years of 10 hours on the phones, and they don't know what they did. They literally shot themselves in the foot. That was a lot of training. That was a lot of, tenure. I was training their people. I helped them with lawsuits and a bunch of things, programming, all that stuff. So it's funny how that went. And then we went to Europe. It was just like, did I really get fired? It doesn't feel like it, but yeah. So yeah, it was definitely not the normal experience when it comes to being let go, to say the least. Uh, but it was just a huge weight lifted off me. I'm like, oh, that means I have to do something different now. It's like God's pushing me to go in a different direction, because I'm a God fearing man. So I would say yes, that's what it was. I wasn't going to do it on my own because I'm comfy. I have income coming in. We're trying to move things in different directions, whatever our goals
Mhm.
are. At the time, it was travel mostly because we just needed to get that out before we started having kids.
Yeah.
We have a kid now, so obviously we're past that chapter. But it was a lot of like, hey,
You were
we
in a
want to
season.
exactly, and so it was just like we're not thinking, oh, let's try and make this as explosive as possible. So retirement is just amazing. It's like, yeah, I started doing that like 2020s when I started really getting into finance. Like I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and was just like, okay, let's find out what this is about. Oh wow. If you can control your finances, you can really control a lot of aspects of your life. This is really fascinating.
A lot of anxiety falls off the board,
Well,
I'm
yes,
sure.
yes, absolutely. Relationship issues, uh, friendship issues. Like if you get finance right, everything else kind of falls into place a lot of the times. Because what you have to do in order to get finances right is complementary to what you got to do to get your health in order to have great relationships, in order to build an amazing business or create something cool if you're an artistic person, that kind of thing. So I think that it connects in that way. It's what I've seen.
Do you think that, I mean, we teach Delay the Binge, which is all about a purposeful pause, taking a moment to really think about, why am I about to do this thing that doesn't serve me well? And that could be the case with finances. I mean, that plagues a lot of us. And if we're stressed or anxious, the first thing we want to do is go spend, to relieve the stress temporarily, but then it bites us in the bottom later. So is
Yes.
that one of the things that, like, since you're in the financial space now, you know, is that the beauty of helping others in that arena, helping them realize, okay, so I see a habit here and it's not serving you and it won't serve you in your retirement. I mean, that's got to make you feel good that you're helping them acknowledge that.
Yes, absolutely 100%. It's it's sometimes going against what they're telling you.
Mhm.
That is part of the job, being a financial advisor, because they told you what their goal was. They said, "This is what I want, and I want it in this amount of time." And then you looked at, okay, where are they at? And then you realize, well, they're not going to get there if they keep doing XYZ, right?
Right.
Whatever those things are.
Mhm.
And so something's got to give. You won't get where you want to go in the time frame you want to get there if you keep doing XYZ. So either we can extend the time horizon where, okay, yeah, fine, eventually you'll get there. Sure. Hopefully you will. Or we can say, look, let's take a long, hard look in the mirror and go, which one of these things am I okay with being without for a season or for a while or indefinitely?
Well, do you find that the meaningful piece has to be, you can't have people just change overnight. They can't undo all the bad patterns that they've developed over a long period of time, and now financially they're seeing the results of that. So the meaningful, because you're very mission oriented. I don't know if you realize that. So the orientation of you would be to take them in small steps, right? First, you need to do this. And then if they are successful at that, then you take them to the next step. That's how I see investing. Like, let's take little baby steps.
Yeah.
you
Yeah. I
know,
think, I think back to Dave Ramsey on this one.
yeah.
So in his Ramsey Solutions organization, they're always talking about there's two different ways to get out of debt, for example, as
Hmm.
just like a structure. And one way is the avalanche method, which those who are listening are not familiar. Basically, you look at all of the interest rates of all the different debts you have, and whichever one's the highest, that's the one you need to pay off first. Now, mathematically speaking, that makes sense because you would pay the least amount of interest given your situation.
Hmm.
However, that's not the method and the path that is you find the most success on. The actual successful path is the snowball method, where you basically take the smallest balance of your debts
Yeah.
and you pay that off first. And then you get that small win. Oh, the dopamine hit. Oh, that feels good. Maybe I'll just, now that I've done that, I can take what I was paying on that one and I can use it for the next one. Yes. Yes, you can. So then you go into the next one and keep on doing it till you're out of debt. So basically, either one gets you out of debt. It's just, even though one's makes more sense mathematically and you pay less interest, it's not as gratifying as, hey, I just knocked out one of those debts. So I think of it that way too, because you were thinking about like, okay, it's a habit, it's been built over time. Here they are doing it. How are we going to change that? It's baby steps.
We study a lot on the. I love the neuroscience of the brain when it comes to unhealthy habits and
Yeah.
patterns. And the lower, I call it the cave. It's funny that you referenced cavemen earlier, but
Yeah.
the lower portion of our brain is the short term. I just want to help you right now feel better, sort of protective part of our brain. And that's where, we do the thing, shopping, spending, eating, drinking, all of that to temporarily relieve what's really going on. So, I mean, I'm sure that you provide some therapy in your line of work because to get people to realize, why are you really overspending? Why are you really making this choice instead of this one that is better for you? Do you find that you do that a lot in your line of work?
Yeah. It's a matter of finding the root cause
Yeah.
of what it is. And For some folks, they'll take it at face value. You tell them, hey, stop doing that. And they say, okay, I'll do that. And then you notice they don't do it because now they're being held accountable by somebody. So to save face, they just won't, even though
Yeah.
they probably want to. Like you're
Yeah.
not seeing that struggle. I think a great book that you've probably read, and I'm still in the process of reading, but I've seen a lot of podcasts with the guy, James Clear and his Atomic Habits,
Oh
right?
my goodness. I've read it 3 times. Yes. I
So
love the
there you
book.
go. You're a veteran then on the Atomic Habits. But it's just like, you have to find ways to maybe not necessarily get rid of the habit, but
Mhm.
find something that you can replace with it
Right.
instead.
You've got to
So
replace the bad pattern with the good pattern.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So it's just like, I think it was a different book actually. I think it was Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect, where he talks about that, where he says, actually, I'd always like to eat a piece of chocolate cake after dinner, but I noticed that my gut line was getting bad. So instead, I was thinking about it and I was like, I really just want the sweetness. I don't really want the whole cake. I just want that little sweetness at the end just to kind of, put a little period on my meal. So then he decided, I'm going to get 2 Hershey's Kisses at the end instead. Mhm. It worked. It gave him the same, whatever he needed, and he didn't overcompensate. And so it's similar when I'm thinking about bad habits, when I'm thinking about in my own life, how do I get rid of something? It's like, well, I tend to, when we finish a meal, I'm just going to keep eating. I don't know if it's a guy thing, but I'm definitely like, okay, we're watching something on TV. I got to snack on something. And for me, that fix was like, okay, get some gum. I don't think gum's the healthiest thing in the world, but hey, get some gum. And as long as I'm chewing on something, I don't actually need anything else.
Well, my answer is that's how I came up with Delay the Binge is that, and that's my next book.
Oh,
But
nice.
it's all about, the chocolate cake, for example. If I want
Yes.
to eat a big old piece of chocolate cake, I know I've educated myself. I know that's not good for me. It's not gonna serve me well, but I really want it because I'm stressed or I'm anxious or I'm upset emotionally. So I pause and then tell myself, "Okay," like a child, "I can't eat this now, but I can have it tomorrow if I still want it." So for some reason, that delay, sets off the brain in a way that you no longer want it because you think in your mind, you've taken control. I can have this tomorrow if I still want it. It's
Yeah.
just a delay that serves you, a
And
pause.
we can take that same idea, and this has
Mhm,
been said numerous times on the Ramsey side of things, like we are talking about earlier, Dave Ramsey stuff.
mhm.
But hey, online shopping, you're on Amazon, you're on
Oof.
Walmart, whatever it is, right? Those are the big ones right now. But anyway, and you're like, oh man, I really want to buy that thing, but you don't need it. Like you really thought about it. You're like, I don't really need it. Was it a sale? Was it just, it's nice to have? Did you just get that fixation, the coping mechanism like you're talking about? Well, you put it in the cart. You just don't buy it yet. Sleep on it. You still want it tomorrow? Okay, fine. All right. Like that's one way to kind of, assuming that it's not going to put you in like horrendous debt. Obviously, the caveat is
Well, and you
make sure
usually
you're
don't
thinking,
want it the next day, and
yeah,
whatever was you were feeling is now, it's tapered off. So you no longer need to, um, cope with whatever your
yes,
behavior is. So that is why even being in the band, all right, you were doing what we call the plus one, which is plus one theory is doing your best plus one more. I mean, you weren't sure if you could do it, but you did it anyway. You applied yourself. And you take all that from your past and you've applied it to what you do now, but you choose joy in it. You choose kindness. And not everyone does that. I want you to know. So I have to personally thank you because that gave me hope in people again, just in dealing in my 1 15-minute call with you. So
wow,
it really, and that's what I always tell people. Kindness is not to be taken for granted because growing up, let me tell this little bit to you. We were starving because we had no adults for 3 or 4 weeks sometimes. So it was summer, no free school lunches. So we'd go down to the convenience store and steal hot dogs, weenies, and the buns, and then take them home, put them under our shirt. Well, one day the owner of the store, his name was Mac, and he said, "Hey, you two, you stop right there." We thought, "Oh no, we're going to jail." But we turn around and he's holding a bottle of mustard. And he said, "Y'all have been taking my hot dogs for weeks. Don't you want some mustard?"
oh
And
man,
we said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Don't steal from me, girls. If you need food, You ask me and I'll give it to you. And so I left that day. I'd never experienced kindness. I didn't even know what he did. I didn't know what to call it. All I knew is that I wanted to be like Mac. He's impacted me to this day, David, Mac. And it took him, what, 4 seconds? And it's impacted me for the rest of my life. He made
Nice.
that difference. So we all have that ability to, in whatever job we have and whatever we're doing, we have that connection, that power to impact people in just a few seconds. And we do make a difference. You do make a difference. You made a difference to me. You saw me, you saw my work. So being seen is very important for me because I was unseen for so long. But anyway, I just want to thank you for that. So
Nice.
living in harmony day to day, you said that's what you love. So how does harmony actually, what does that look like in real life for you?
Yes. I think I actually did learn this from where I'm working now. At least put it in more of a structural aspect. But harmony means not everything's always in balance. Sometimes you're spending a little bit more time on work. Sometimes you're spending a little bit more time with family. Sometimes you're spending a little bit more time on recreation. And that's okay.
Mhm.
It's just as long as you can be present in whatever it is that you're doing, that's really important. And so, obviously, financial advisor space, you can have meetings that run pretty late because that's the only time people can talk, right? Or maybe it's on the weekends sometimes, and that's okay. You just got to look at it and go, you know what? I am serving this person. So right now, in that moment, my full attention, my full focus is going to be on that meeting with that person, and that's all. Would you with family? Same thing. And I think that that's really what harmony is about. It's just finding a way to just go through the ebbs and flows of where you're needed, when you're needed, and just finding a way to make that work. So when they say work-life balance, I feel like you're looking at a scale, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it can only be one way or another, and it's kind of restricting. But a harmony is more like, it's kind of a circle, and you have the different points, different parts of your life, and it's just like kind of amoeba looking thing that just moves around, right?
Yeah.
Hey, a little bit more, a little bit more, just depending on what's going on. And that best serves your life and the lives of others. I think that that's a great way. Now, as life goes on, obviously your priorities can change, and maybe you have more time. You can afford to have more opportunity with your time and things like that. But in the middle of the busy work, in the middle of the developing of a family, in the middle of trying to find a balance, it's more harmony than it is balance.
Right. Someone once asked me what's the hardest thing, and the first answer was marriage. It's the hardest job I've ever had. But also is balance. I'm very passionate about my work, but I'm more passionate about my family. But sometimes those two, the balance collide. I mean, sometimes I can't see what's more important. Do I go and speak at this event that's going to serve me well? Or do I go to my grandson's birthday party? Sometimes you just have to choose. Just like you
Yes.
choose joy, you have to choose balance. You know how I get the answer to things like that, tough questions like that? You can use this in your line of work if you want.
Sure.
But when I have a decision to make, I ask myself, how do I feel? I'm gonna pretend I say no. How does that make me feel? And then I think about it. And then I say, okay, if I say yes, how does that make me feel? And I choose the better of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
It works. It's such a mental game, but it's again neuroscience. But you know, that's how I make hard decisions.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger things. I like that. I'll have to steal that from you. Just like next time I want to make a decision of something where I have, two particular things that are needing my time at the same time slot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And so this is my final question, I promise. I could
no
talk to you
worries.
all day, but
Sure.
financial stress is one of the biggest contributors to what I call quiet depletion. I mentioned it earlier. For those who may find themselves placing enormous pressure on their finances, or even using spending as a way to cope with stress, what perspective would you want the listeners to consider when they're struggling with that? I mean, is there anything that you can help them with today? What's the first step
Okay.
they can take?
Well, to begin with, I'll get a little biblical. So for those who are not believers, take this as,
We are very
helpful.
much, I am very much,
Yeah.
I'm a retired youth minister. So
Yes, of course, of course. But I mean, for those who maybe, I'm not trying to, say, oh, you guys don't believe, so you can't use this. No, no, no. This is for everyone. Um,
it's
but
spiritual.
exactly. I'm terrible. I should remember this, but I forget exactly where in the Bible. But it talks about how look at the birds and look and see how they don't worry about how they're going to get food, right? They just know that God's going to provide, right? Or for those that
Exactly.
believe in the universe will provide, right? So I'm sitting here going, that's the first thing to kind of eliminate the stress. Like somehow, some way, it's gonna be okay. And why? You're like, David, why is it gonna be okay? There's all these terrible things that are happening. Oh my God, what do I do? Because you're gonna make it okay. You are gonna find a way to make it okay. You got to believe in yourself. And that's another thing too, because I think there's a lack of faith. And we are, like we said earlier, our own harshest critics, right? So we always just go to the negative and just going on this downward spiral into negative hood. But we need to remember that first. Now, when it starts getting to the point where you're like, okay, I've dealt with my emotions. I know things are going to be okay because I'm going to do everything I can to make it okay, right? Trying your darndest. Good. That's where you want to be to begin with. Now, the next thing you go is, all right, how much did I make? Cool. Now I've got to break that down into segments. Okay. Now you'll hear a lot of different people talk about a lot of different things, but you got to do what's best for you. Now, maybe in this season where you have a lot of debt or you're really behind on things, you're trying to get your life together, you're going to spend most of that money on those things. But always try your best to save a little bit. Could be $10.
There's those small
20.
steps again.
Exactly. See, we're going right back. See, full circle. So it's like save a little bit. Okay. And you keep that going. And eventually, when you're through all of that season, you'll find out that, hey, you're doing better than most. So I think that's when you start getting into like the math and you start figuring out like, okay, what am I going to do? You want to, as many people will say, I think it was the richest man in Babylon, it said it. And also Ramit Sethi from I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He says this all the time. So does Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. They'll all say this. You got to pay yourself first. Okay. So when you're at that spot where you're actually earning money and you're trying to figure out what to do with it and you've kind of got a good handle on things, definitely pay yourself first. That's saving and building an emergency fund, right? Dave Ramsey, they'll say that. Start the emergency fund first and then invest afterwards. And if you got debt, tackle that right after you've done that. Just tack that debt because the debt is going to keep you in that same place and you want to get out there as soon as possible. So whatever that means and whatever that takes, try to put that as your mantra. But before any of that, remember, it's going to be okay. And why? Because you're going to do everything in your darndest to make it okay.
Right. And I'll just add to that before we end today by saying, you know, what you're supposed to do, whether it's money, food, you know, working, whatever it is, drinking, what you should or should not do. And you need to ask yourself if you have to journal every day when it happens, why? What's really going on? You shouldn't spend your money. You should save it, but we don't. Why? You need to ask yourself why. There are experts like David out there that can help you hold your hand and take you in those small steps to educate you. Be curious. Try to see what's the pattern here. What do I need to do differently? And when you go to someone like that, like David, that really genuinely cares about your future, I think that he could help point it out, and you just need to take it and use it for fuel to succeed. So, David, your story, it beautifully reflects everything I believe in deeply. The number one is that your past doesn't define you, it positions you, it prepares you. So thank you for your time. Thank you so much. I can't there's all kinds of aha moments here that I plan to use. So thank you for your wisdom.
No, it's been an honor. Thank you for having me on the podcast, Pam.
We'll talk soon.